Hello, my name is Diego Diapera, and this video is on a glimpse into the life cycle of medieval Novgorod through the eyes of Birchbark. In the 1950s, archaeologists discovered hundreds of birchbark documents near Novgorod in Russia. They were letters, notes, and receipts dating from the 11th to the 15th centuries, relating to all sorts of topics such as household life, trade and finance, travel, administration, religion, love letters, and even historical events. They were written by people of both sexes and all ages and statuses. They revealed the high literacy rate in Novgorod, which was likely higher than in Western Europe. Women often could read, enjoyed nearly equal rights to males, and were able to own land and enter into trade. Novgorod was a crucial trade link between Russia and Western Europe. While Novgorod is by far the largest source of the documents, others have been found in Staraya Russa, Torso, Smolensk, and other cities. Novgorod was founded around 947 by the Kievan princess Olga and was part of Kievan Rus. In 988, Kievan Rus adopted Christianity, and in Novgorod the first churches were built soon after and literacy developed. In 1136, the Kievan prince Vsevolod was deposed and replaced with Sviatoslav Olgovich, spelling the beginning of the Novgorod Republic. It had a unique political system centered around a Veche assembly, theoretically open to the people. However, the boyar nobles had most of the power and elected the posadnik or governor. The 13th century was turbulent for Novgorod with the Mongol invasion and other military threats from the Teutonic Knights and Swedes. The city's trade links were cut off by the Mongols but recovered in the 14th century. When Prince Yaroslav the Wise visited Novgorod in 1030, he took 300 noble and clerical children to teach them literacy. This was immensely important for the development of literacy in Novgorod. The Novgorod Psalter is also from this period, and is the oldest dated book in the entire Slavic world. It was meant to teach writing. The teacher wrote something, had the pupils copy him, then rubbed it out and continued on. When learned, the skill of reading and writing Cyrillic could easily be used for religious and secular purposes. Yaroslav's pupils were given a broad Christian education, and this created a literate class who started the tradition of practical literacy. Many of the Birchbark documents are connected to the church. Clergy practiced pragmatic writing, and this ecclesiastical Birchbark literacy created a mediating link between ecclesiastical parchment literacy on one side and lay Birchbark literacy on another. A moneylender writing down the names of debtors and their total debts is basically doing the same thing as a priest putting together a list of saints to be mentioned in that day's service. Both are producing records for memory, and the former is likely following the latter's example. Lay practical literacy used formulas such as a cross at the beginning of each letter as reminders of literacy's Christian roots. However, this gradually fell out of use as Christianity and writing became more integrated into society, making them redundant. Possibly the most famous and distinctive birchbarks are those from a medieval classroom, which provide us with a unique historical peek. Birchbark was a good material for writing things down with such a short half-life. When pupils got bored, they would begin to doodle, not unlike today. 17 birchbarks were created by a child named Onfim, dating from around 1240 to 1260. The style of his drawings and the kinds of text he wrote showed that he might have been only around 6 or 7 years old. On one of the drawings, N202, Onfim drew rough figures with big hands. Although the text is not that clear, it may read to take depths from Demeter. Onfim's texts show that children in 13th century Novgorod learned to read and write by practicing the alphabet and spelling out syllables, i.e. writing out all the consonants and the vowel A, then all the consonants and the vowel E, etc. They would also copy well-known texts like the Psalms. N202 is a copy of common business notes from adults. We see here that Onfim is starting to write the forms of a letter on the collection of debts, which was important for a relatively advanced medieval economy like Novgorod. Onfim is imitating the actions of adults as part of his learning process. I suspect that Onfim's parents had to collect debts from Demeter, and Onfim was imitating one of their letters. In N200, Onfim has spelled out the letters A to K of the Cyrillic alphabet in the upper right corner. He has also drawn a knight on horseback with a raised sword, piercing a vanquished enemy, possibly a beast, with a spear. Onfim wrote his name beside the knight and below the letters, suggesting that he is a knight. I think these drawings may have been influenced by the turbulent period Novgorod experienced in the mid-13th century when it was attacked by enemies such as the Mongols and the Teutonic Knights. Indeed, the Novgorodians under Prince Alexander Nevsky won a glorious victory against the Teutonic Knights in the Battle of the Ice in 1242, and this triumph may have been on Onfim's mind. He may have looked up to the prince and Novgorod's warriors, and they may have inspired his knight. Perhaps he wanted to be like them when he was older. N199 is an example of recycled birch bark which used to be on the bottom of a basket before being given to Onfim for his riding exercises when the basket was spent. On the inner side, Onfim has written the letters of the Cyrillic alphabet and sequences of syllable exercises. Ba, ba, ga, da, etc. On the outer side, Onfim drew a beast, and on a frame has written a bow from Onfim to Danilo. This formula is inspired by Church Slavonic, and the word for bow in Novgorodian is a Church Slavonic word taken from a Greek loanword. Its counterpart in the closure of a letter can be I bow to you or I kiss you, the latter also coming from Church Slavonic. Below the frame in the middle of the beast, Onfim wrote, I am a poppy. The same inscription is found in letter N1067 from the second quarter of the 14th century. The piece of birch bark it is written on has small eye holes, indicating that a child might have attached it with a cord around the neck of his favorite poppy. Onfim's fantastical beast has a long neck, small ears, and a curly tail. It has something protruding from its mouth that appears similar to the feathered shaft of an arrow, perhaps its fire breath or its forked tongue. Onfim's drawings show that his world of imagination had horses, weapons, knights killing enemies, and monsters, and appear like the artwork of any child today or those of any day and age. I suspect they might have been taken from Slavic mythology or folklore. Onfim's learning also included recreating short texts like N203, which has a well-attested religious formula above a messy drawing of two human figures, one standing and one on horseback, which says, Lord, help your servant Onfim. Another view of the drawing is that it depicts Adam, Eve, and the serpent. In N207, Onfim has copied phrases from a psalter. In N206, he has written, along with syllable exercises and drawings, a sequence of 4 letters. They may read a number, 1263, which possibly represents a year, lining up with the birchbark's approximate date. However, a new interpretation sees the 4 letters as an abbreviation of the first words of the 6 o'clock troparion, which is a short hymn sung in Orthodox church services. Who on the 6th day and hour? Onfim must have understood it and used it to practice writing. There are also other troparia found on birchbark, including N977 from around 1180 to 1220, which has the first words of each tone or glass. Written by Joachim, this document must have been used as a memory aid to help a priest or choirman learn the text of this troparion. So Onfim was imitating the actions of adults working in the ecclesiastical realm through his copying of the birchbark, and he may have been primed to be a priest or choirman himself. As we have seen, religion was deeply tied to education in Novgorod. There are other examples of writing exercises. The oldest one, N591, dates from 1030 and spells out letters such as A, B, V, G, D, etc. Practicing the alphabet and copying religious texts was also done on wooden wax tablets, of which a dozen or so have been discovered in Novgorod. One example from the 12th century has a wooden frame with carved letters. One edge has an arrangement of Cyrillic letters B, Z, K, P, F, S, and Ju, read from top to bottom. Comparing this with the rows of letters Onfim wrote on N199, The wax tablet's order is largely analogous to the second column of N199. This proves that the wax tablet was likely part of a polyptych made up of 5 tablets. If those 5 tablets were joined, the alphabet must have been organized in the order highlighted on the lower diagram. I think this shows that the copying of the letters followed a logical sequence in Novgorodian education, and that Anfim's education would have been somewhat similar to that of Novgorodian schoolchildren 200 years earlier. Anfim may have copied the sequences already found in polyptychs. And 687 is a letter written about a century later, around 1360 to 80, which instructs, "Buy yourself butter and buy clothes for the children. Let them study riding and the horses." The sender is likely a husband writing to his wife from out of town. He asks his recipient to carry out many everyday tasks. One is having the children learn to write. This was likely a normal request for the period. Otherwise, we may see more detail or even a separate letter sent. The recipient clearly understood what to do, and it would be normal for children in this family to learn some literacy. I think this also indicates that writing was related to everyday tasks in Novgorod and was not just largely a fancy elite activity like in other parts of Europe. Ordinary people like this family would write as well. There are less texts about the church and written in Church Slavonic on the Birchbark corpus. This is because these types of texts were written on parchment due to their importance. One text, N717 from 1160 to 80, can be linked to the convent of St. Barbara. It reads, "A bow from the abbess to Ofrosenija. Send the habit and wimples. If you have a lot of wimples, send up the 5 wimples. I am extremely busy with the nuns. They have to be tonsured soon. Therefore, do find out if Matvech is at the monastery." The habit mentioned is likely a different type of monastic garment, one wound or laced around the head or body. This is the only found instance of this word in Old East Slavic. 4 abbesses serving in the convent are named in separate chronicles: Anna, Marimjana, Christina, and Varvara. One likely sent the letter. Matvech was likely the priest who had to consecrate the novices. I think they would have been training in the monastery, possibly doing more advanced versions of religious exercises similar to Anfim's, and would have been young adults when they were consecrated. The abbesses must have been much older. Many of the Birchbarks concern trade. One insightful letter is from Pskov, originally a satellite of Novgorod which had become independent by the time of this letter, Pskov 6, from around 1260 to 80. From Kjurik and from Gerasim to Anfim. About the squirrel skin, if you, plural, haven't traded it yet, send it here immediately, because squirrel skin is selling well here. And about ourselves, if you, Anfim, are free, come to us. Xenophon has done us harm. And about this man, we don't know him. In this, may God's will be done, and yours. The physical artifact in the structure of the text show that this letter was carefully written and edited. Apart from the salutation and closing, the letter has 3 sections, each starting with a heading, about the squirrel skin, and about ourselves, and about this man, referring to Xenophon. The first 2 sections have blatant requests with rationales, and the third just a rationale, we do not know him, which implies that the man should not be trusted. The letter ends with the author confiding his welfare to the recipient. I think these jobs in trade could be an important part of the life cycle of some young men in Novgorod, and they appear to be common. Birchbark communication could also be done over long distances. In this letter N424 from 1100 to 1120, Kazurjish writes from outside Novgorod, either in Smolensk or Kiev. He is imploring his parents to come because of the better economic conditions he has noticed during his travels. A letter from Kazurjish to father and to mother. After selling the farm, come, plural, here, either to Smolensk or to Kiev. Grain is cheap. If you don't come, send me a note saying whether you are well. This letter shows us how economic conditions in medieval Novgorod changed. Since the soil conditions were unfavorable for a large population, importing food was necessary and this made life relatively expensive. The chronicles talk about recurring food shortages and famines in the city. Grzegorz appears to have been an enterprising young man who was inquisitively searching for better economic conditions. One landmark Birchbark letter is N1000 from 1140 to 60, which reads, "From Kias and from Ziloko to Tverjata and to Ivan, we are both fine." While it appears like a simple greetings, one of the recipients, Ivan, has been connected with Luca, who is mentioned as author referent in many other Birchbark communications. Luca and Ivan send this letter, N1009, likely written by Ivan. "From Luca and from Ivan to Snovid, we are both fine. We've already sold everything. We didn't buy any Greek merchandise. Tried to get a little overseas merchandise." N1009 and others show that Luca and Ivan were business partners on a trip to buy and sell goods. They had a large and thriving business, trading in different types of grain, hides, and furs, horses, wine, glassware, and pans. They dabbled in foreign merchandise. The Greek appears to be Byzantine, while the overseas might be from northwestern Europe. The impression is that Luca, Ivan, and Snovid are one family. The former two are brothers, while the latter is their father. The sons must have often gone on long trips away from Novgorod, while their father, to whom they sent their letters and instructions, stayed in the city. These birchbarks are business letters, resting on the shared business of the correspondence. "We are both fine" appears to refer to the completion of business missions, showing that the mutual interests of the authors are flourishing. This offers a fascinating glimpse into the operation of a family business in Novgorod. The young men are likely subordinate to their father and will grow in wealth and prestige through these trading missions. They were in contact with each other and also important people from the upper Novgorodian society, like the Posaniks, Miroslav Nestinich, nicknamed Miloska, and Jakun Miloslavich, and Marena, the wife of the boyar Peter Miksalkovich. Snovid appears in another letter, and 955 from 1140 to 60. This letter's upper layer has been lost, but it evidently had a drawing of a cross with a woman and a man on either side. It appears to show a wedding ceremony. It has 3 sections with an ornamental initial, unusual for a birchbark letter, which is more straightforward. It shows different parts of what is apparently a wedding agreement. The upper part says, "From Ilusa to Marena, big braid, may she, or let her, marry Snovid." The lower left says, "Marenka, let the vagina drink and the clitoris." The lower right says, "Thus spoke Milusa, give yesterday's 2 grivnas." At the top, Milusa tells Marena about the upcoming wedding of Big Braid and Snovid. Big Braid is likely an individual nickname for an unmarried woman who wore her hair in a braid, following the Russian tradition for unmarried women. Milusa asks for money in the message on the lower right, proving that she is a matchmaker. She utters a wish on the lower left that the marriage be fruitful, and this shows that the latter is the bride's mother. While Milusa uses Marena's full name in the opening formula, in the fertility spell she uses a diminutive form of Marenka. There are some other letters about love. One, and 377, is from 1280 to 1300. The author, Mikita, writes his proposal to Maranija in a straightforward way. "From Mikita to Maranija, I want you and you me, and Ignat Moiseev is witness to that. And in property, the text is more realistic than it appears. The phrase, 'I want you and you me,' is prosaic and was used formulaically in medieval marriage proposals, so it does not necessarily say much about Mikita's feelings. Mikita is unusual in proposing directly to Maranija instead of her parents. Other medieval sources, like the one we just saw, show that the groom's family negotiated the marriage with the bride's parents or other senior family members. While Novgorod had important connections with Byzantium, it later refocused on its large colonial lands to the northeast, largely because the Mongol invasion had cut off trade. As a result, the topics of the Birchbark letters changed from international trade to interior administrative matters like taxation. Many Birchbark letters from this period are about the gathering of revenues by tax officials and stewards, or correspondence between peasants and landlords living in the city to manage the boyars' estates outside the city. For the former topic, the letter N286 from 1351 or shortly after is of particular interest. It mentions a peace treaty. From Grigori Dimitar, "We are well. Make your rounds, don't be afraid. They have made peace on the old border of Prince Juri, and they have sent me to Karelia to the Cajan Sea. Can you imagine? You, i.e. I, shouldn't hinder, shouldn't do harm to the Cajan people, and shouldn't make a bad name for yourself. If you have collected last year's tribute, take mine also. And if you hear I am not going to Noja, then you go. And at home all is well. Send me some news. If you can, help me out with something." The peace on the old border with Prince Jurich that Grigori mentions is the renewal of the Treaty of Noteborg, which had set the border between Novgorod and its enemy Sweden in 1323. The treaty was confirmed many times, but accounting for the dating of N286 and other letters and notes, this letter is likely about the renewal in the year 1351. The Isthmus of Karelia was divided into Swedish western and Novgorodian eastern sections. We know from this communication that Grigori and Dimitar, probably his brother, were likely tax collectors in the northwestern hinterlands of Novgorod. Grigori is asking that Dimitar take the work that he was responsible for in southern Karelia, which he says is now secure again because of the peace treaty. Grigori himself has been sent further north to the Cajan Sea, the upper section of the Gulf of Bothnia. He did not expect the assignment and is outraged with it, and wants to make sure Dimitar finishes Grigori's normal tasks. One communication between peasants and landlords is seen in N361 from 1380 to 1400. A bow from the people of the Sinja and from the people of Bratilovici to Lord Jakov. "Come, Lord, for your grain, so that it will not rot, Lord. We are ruined now, Lord. The grain has frozen. There is nothing to sow, Lord, and also there is nothing to eat. You and your opponents, Lord, will not come to terms between yourselves, and between you we are ruined." The two places referenced, the river Sinja and the village of Bratilovici, today Ratilovo, are more than 200 kilometers northeast of Novgorod. In the letter, the villagers from two settlements beg for help and criticize Jakov as they blame their problems on his ongoing issues with another landlord or landlords. I think this shows that whether they wrote it themselves or not, peasants did not hesitate to use Birchbark letters to voice their complaints and advocate for themselves. Many connections have been established between individuals across different Birchbark letters. One is between Oliseh Greshin and Miloska Nestinich. Greshin was a famous citizen of Novgorod in the late 12th century and likely the son of Peter Miksalkovich. Two texts about him are key. N502, where Miloska, called Miroslav in the Birchbark, Nestinich writes to Oliseh Greshin about Gavko from Polo, whom Oliseh must place before the witnesses that he mentions in the event that he has seen how I arrested Ivan. N549 is a commission from a priest to paint him two six-winged angels on two small icons above the intercession. Miroska Nestinich, whom we have already encountered, was an important boyar in the Posadnik of Novgorod from 1189 until he died in 1204. The two letters reveal that Oliseh was both an artist, painting icons and frescoes, and a court official. He was also a priest, unsuccessfully standing in the elections for a new bishop in 1193. Thus, he is an example of the integration of secular and ecclesiastical activities in Novgorod. He shows that some prominent citizens could have many different occupations in Novgorod. Another interesting network comes from Jakin, who we have already seen one letter from. Active from roughly the 1160s to the 90s, he has turned out to be Novgorod's most productive attested writer. Jakin's writings are mostly notes on many activities relating to church practices and household management, maybe at the same time or different parts of his life. He was definitely well educated and could skillfully create an outline of a troparion, and catalog supplies of parchment and other monastic items, like oil and headgear. He is also shown managing a large boyar household, dealing with the exchange of many commodities like oat, beans, peas, barley, linseed, rye, salt, and leading the financial administration, which entailed handling large sums of money. One example is N1021, which is about the transaction of around 3,100 squirrel skins for the very big amount of 2,233 kinas, or around 89 grivnas. This is but a taste of the rich historical world of medieval Novgorod we can discover from interpreting the Birchbark letters. Thank you for listening to my video. Here are references if you want to know more.